This is Eric Pinnell, and you're listening to episode 24 of Sneaky Geek.
Hey everybody.
Oh, hey.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
I'm alright. How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, that's good.
Welcome to Sneaky Geek. Today, we have our 2018 Beyond Sneaky Geek contest winner. And the only rules for entry is be in Orange County at a time when we want to record.
Yeah.
But he did it. Erik Pinnell.
Hey, you won!
Woo! Yay!
Alright.
It feels good, you know.
Yeah.
I really took out all the competition, and you know, it's good to be winner.
Yeah. Sorry, Tommy.
Sorry, Tommy.
It would be cool if he was here, though.
Yeah, it would.
So, we're here today, and we are talking about...
Britney Spears?
No.
Oh.
Better.
I'm at the wrong podcast.
Let's talk about music.
Yeah.
And more importantly, music and comic book tie-ins, which are a thing. And a thing that we've actually kind of talked about a little bit before here and there.
Like in that Black Panther podcast?
Like in that Black Panther podcast that's
been missing?
never come out because of all sorts of terrible things that happened to our hard drive. We're working on it. It'll come out. It's never not going to be relevant.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Sort of.
Maybe. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, we're talking about Coheed and Cambria.
Yes, we are.
Woo! And this is a first for me because this is a You Should Be Reading podcast episode, and I am the guy who should be reading, apparently.
Awesome.
I know nothing about Coheed and Cambria except that I like the song Welcome Home, and I find the guy's voice to be a little jarring.
All right. Yeah.
That's a pretty standard review.
Yeah.
Yep. Also, I do want to say, on a positive note of Coheed and Cambria, I love the instrumentation. I am a huge fan of drummers who don't rely heavily on smashing the cymbal. Mm-hmm. And this guy seems to know how to use a hi-hat very well, or at least the guy in Welcome Home does, because apparently there's more than one of them.
Yes.
And
There's two drummers. There were two drummers.
There's been some line
and I like
changes.
music that builds, like power metal.
Yeah.
It's very 80s. And,
that's actually a key point that I would love to bring up later when we come to that.
Oh, and we'll get there. Yeah.
Cool. So,
So right off the bat,
tell me.
Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about Coheed?
What would you like to know? My introduction, who they are.
Coheed.
Yeah, how did you get into the band?
So, it's actually a really odd entry into learning a band. It was actually in the heydays of Guitar Hero,
Yes.
Hero 3.
So, in related news, Welcome Home was me and Jacob from a few podcasts ago, and our buddy Corey's go-to song. That was our drunk song, but we'd always switch instruments, because I'm a drummer, and then I think Corey would be on the drums, and then Jacob would do...
Sick.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then I ended up doing the drum, or I ended up doing the guitar on there, but that'd be our drunken Guitar Hero song.
Was Scooter always the one singing? Oh, it was Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait,
And
there's
Rock
drums on
Band.
Guitar Hero?
Yeah, that's right. It was on both? It was on Rock Band.
It was on
I
Rock
think
Band?
it was
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
Okay. On one of those instruments.
Yeah, anyways, that was our
Activision-y
go-to
things.
drunk song, or even sober song, or sober song and then drunk song later on, because fuck yeah, that solo in there.
Yeah, because I actually play guitar, and a buddy of mine, he showed it to me, and it was like, dude, you should learn how to play this. And I immediately said, oh, yes, I will learn how to play this. And I sat down for quite some time, and I learned it.
Yeah.
But I didn't go back to really all of their catalog until a couple years later when I was in college, doing a lot of studying.
Yeah.
Just kind of thinking to myself, hey, what's a good band I could start getting back into? And they just kind of a little light flashed in the back of my head. I was like, I'll start at the beginning and see what I like.
Yeah.
And it just, it was all encompassing. It was like my band from that point on, because it was just everything that I was hoping for at the time and more.
So not to date all of us, but when you went and found them again, did you... I mean, we didn't have easily accessible, subscribable streaming services at that time, right?
I was on Pandora at the time, and the title song from their second album came on, and that was reignited my memory. It was like, oh, hey, this is Coheed and Cambria again. I wonder if this is a good song. Yeah. And I sat down, I was like, oh, this is epic. All their songs must be epic. I have to sit down and really take the time, go through them all and see what I like, and it did not disappoint.
Yeah, definitely. So I got into them in high school with all the drama kids, so Mitch and Jordan and Zach were all listening to him, and like they were on the radio a little bit with Blood Red Summer.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Bryce mentioned, I dug the song, but I couldn't deal with his vocals. I'm kind of like vocals are can ruin a band for me.
Yeah,
vocalist,
same.
And so like I'm very picky. So with them, it was hard because I really dug the songs, and I kind of dug the lyrics, but like his voice kind of got to me.
Yeah.
And then it was either Jordan or Zach. They're like, no, like listen to some other stuff. Like he definitely has a high voice, but that's one of the higher keys that he's using is in that song. I'm like,
Gotcha.
all right. So I checked him out, and this was right when the second album came out, which is the third in the story, which we'll get to in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the story yet.
Yeah, and so I just kind of went, listened to more. I'm like, all right, that's cool, and didn't get super into them, but I'm like, okay, I appreciate this a lot more now. And then college came around, we were all hanging out one day, and I saw online on the MySpace, because back then, it was before Facebook let everybody in,
Right.
and we were...
And MySpace had music all over it, so every time you went to go socialize with somebody, you were getting introduced to new stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, MySpace.
Whether you wanted to or not.
Whether you wanted to or not, fair. Yeah, there's only so many times
Yeah.
I can listen to one
But
particular
at the
Regina
time, like
Spektor
I,
song.
I was friends with Coheed and Cambria's page on there, and they started putting out stuff for Good Apollo, the album with Welcome Home on it, and they put out 4 YouTube videos that I remember. I think there might have been more or less of kind of like breakdowns of the story and where they were going with it. And that was when YouTube was fairly new, because that was 05, 06.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's early YouTube.
Early YouTube years, yeah.
You wanted to watch a video on the internet at that time, and you might as well look anywhere.
Right. Yeah. So that's, and then after that I kind of got into it, and then Jordan was like, no, you have to check these videos out. And so I remember watching one of them. We talked about it. He said, no, you got to watch the rest of them. So I did. I'm like, this is really cool.
Wait, so are there music videos that are cohesive story?
Sort of. So, okay, so we'll get into that right now. Coheed and Cambria, the band, and their albums, most of them, are based on a storyline.
Uh-huh. Is that storyline represented in, like, is it like sci-fi? Or
Yeah, it's very sci-fi. It's called the Amory Wars. Amory Wars? How do you pronounce it?
Amory Wars is how I've heard it.
Amory
It's the
Wars?
common way.
Yeah. So there's 5 parts to the main story, I think there are.
So the way it's broken down is they started technically in a very similar way to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Starts on what they start as episode 4, which is a very Joseph Campbell hero's journey. We start in the middle. So they start in what is considered the second part of the story, which is the second stage Turbine Blade.
Yes.
Then you have the third entry and then a 2-volume split CD package, which is the 4th, which is the final chapter.
Gotcha.
They eventually completed this and then went back and did the
Prequels.
the prequel, which is
prequel.
the number 1, and then later they did, which is the Afterman, which is like way distant, like prequel, which is also a 2-part album.
Yeah.
So technically there's really 5 entries, that is about, 7 CDs, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
What's a CD?
Get out of here, man.
I don't like your attitude, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are all stories that are told through a comic book.
Not at the time. So
the time.
at first it was kind of just in the album, and if you read the lyrics, they kind of made sense as a story, but they're still not
So
necessarily...
more like a concept, like a series of concepts.
it's a concept album, concept band.
That's cool.
And then after
Concept
a while...
band, I like that.
Yeah, so then after a while, that's when they started putting out the comic books that Claudio wrote.
Claudio is...
He's the lead singer, guitarist.
Okay.
Yeah, the dude with the hair.
The one whose voice you find too jarring.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he started putting out the comic books, and Boom Studios put him out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I do love me some Boom Studios.
Yeah.
They like to
indie
take
label.
on really cool IPs.
Yeah.
And it's something I really appreciate, because you don't want to throw those into like the Marvel label or the DC label or Vertigo or whatever.
their imprints, yeah.
And so it's nice that there's kind of a blanket, one particular studio that really just rocks it, because they've got the Rick and Morty comics, they've got Steven Universe comic, and they have this one as well.
Yeah.
So that's why we're talking about it on the podcast.
Yes, because they're...
Oh!
Yeah. Bringing it all
Imagine
around.
that.
Yeah. So they have quite a few comic books out. They're finishing up, because they didn't do a comic book for the third album.
Which is technically the closing entry.
So the third album is the final chapter of the original Amory Wars story.
So Good Apollo, Burning Star 4,
Which is the title of
part...
an album?
Both of them. So there's 2 albums, the last 2 in the main story. The first part has Welcome Home on it,
Uh-huh.
and the second was put out a couple years later, and that kind of finishes the storyline.
Okay.
also under Good Apollo Burning Star 4, but then Fear Through the Eyes of Madness.
So
can we do these in order because I am getting lost?
Yes,
exactly. That's what it makes it so rich.
Okay,
and
so
complex.
the first album is called
The Second Stage Turbine Blade.
The Second Stage Turbine Blade. The first album is called The Second Stage Turbine Blade.
Second Stage.
Yes.
Of
It
course.
is reference to a factory part that was in Claudio, the lead singer frontman's dad's factory when he grew up.
That's neat.
It's
okay.
There's a lot of homage to Claudio's personal life. He himself is actually written as the main character of the story. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of references to his life that we can explain a little bit later as you go through that.
Yeah.
It's found in the lyrics and in the Greater Amory Wars detail behind that. So that's why he started in technically what is part 2 of the story.
Gotcha. So
After
he starts there, and that is an entire album, and the album had kind of a story concept to it.
Yeah.
In the same way that The Wall by Pink Floyd or Tommy by The Who had.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the second album they came out with, which is part
This is called
3 of the story.
Yeah. In the very beginning, every album has like a number kind of associated with it to follow along the order. So the third one is called In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3.
Okay.
There's
Keeping
actually
Secrets of Silent Earth 3 is the second album by Coheed and Cambria.
Yes.
And it is the third part of the story.
Right? Out in 2003.
Out in 2003.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we eventually went to was Good Apollo Volume 1, which is From Fear Through the Eyes of Madness.
Right.
Which I assume is a prequel?
This is this is
part...
to finish. It's called Good Apollo. I'm Burning Star 4.
Okay.
Yes.
Good Apollo. I'm Burning Star 4.
Yes. So this is a podcast, and Eric's wearing the shirt from the album.
Woo!
One of my favorites.
Okay, so the third album is Good Apollo, A Burning Star.
I'm Burning Star 4.
I'm Burning Star
4.
As in, Star 4 is being burned by me.
Yes.
I'm Burning Star 4.
If you delve more into the actual mythology, Star 4 is a particular structure that is key to the greater background, and then Silent Earth 3 is another part. Mm-hmm. So they actually kind of fit into the numerology
so the
of release.
It's not actually supposed to. It's like a play on word.
They do quite a bit of play on things.
Yeah.
They do that frequently. So then that was one entire entry, which is a very meta take on the universe, which is actually my favorite album. The average Coheed fan would agree. It has Welcome Home and a slew of other great songs. But and then from that point on, this is where things get a little iffy because they went to do Volume 2, which is just called No World for Tomorrow.
Volume 2 of Good Apollo and Burning Star 4. So they kind of split that one up into 2 albums.
Okay, so the story is just really, really long on that one. It took 2 albums to get through.
Effectively, yes.
And there's also the whole meta concept of it outside. Does the second part of that also stick with that meta thing, or does it kind of return more to the story?
The closure of Volume 1, it ends the meta narrative. So that's all encapsulated in Volume 1.
We'll get there a little bit later.
And then it returns to the normal, stream of conscious kind of regular narrative.
So what you're telling me is that Good Apollo and Burning Star 4 is the Clone Wars.
I mean...
And the second, and Volume 2 is Revenge of the Sith.
I mean, if you want to look like that, that kind of makes a little bit of sense.
Because it's kind of outside it, and it kind of is a commentary on the entire existence of it in its own sort of way, but it also is its own story, a little bit self-contained.
There's a lot to discuss in that one, so we'll save
Let's keep going with the general so that we just have all the basic facts out.
Yeah.
So that's the 4th album, which is part 2 of the 3rd part of the story, which closes... the original story?
That closes the end of the Amory Wars, but you still have to remember that there's the first volume.
We came in just after the fall of Troy on our way to the rest of Homer's Odyssey.
Right, I was saying Fall of Troy, not the band.
No, I mean the actual...
Who I've seen play with Coheed in Bakersfield at the Dome.
Oh, great band,
awesome
too.
Band. Yeah, and they got back together last year, I think it was.
They got together 2 years ago, I think, 2016.
Yeah.
I was referring to, in fact, when the city of Troy fell because of a giant horse that they thought wasn't full of people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, Bryce.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I'm just. It was actually the Duke's guitars from.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going back to Joseph King.
I appreciate the reference.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back to the beginning to get the prequel out of the way.
Yes.
Because we're following slightly a hero's journey sort of thing. Does this story kind of follow a hero's journey?
Oh, very much so.
Nice.
This story takes a lot of reference to great high fantasy, sci-fi. There's clear Star Wars referencing.
Yeah.
Dune, even, where there's kind of a messianic character. There's that kind of classic where, the entire family gets lost in a huge tragedy, and then that sets the main character on a redemptive journey to, right all the wrongs that happened to them.
Gotcha.
That's very common. I mean, it's been there for a while, and it's not outrightly stated. And here's the thing, is what we just talked about is Volume 2, which was the 4th album they released, has, to this point, no other media to explain the story. Yeah. So it is still up in the air.
The 4th album came out, there's no visuals aside from music videos?
A few music videos and the album
videos are my jam.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I do what some people would refer to as a living if they lived in Thailand. Or anywhere where the economy let us live for that little.
Yeah.
So up until this point, really, Brian and I, we can go back and look at the artwork and everything in the comics for the first 3 albums. At the time, they made an illustrated book by Christopher Shai that has amazingly, hauntingly beautiful artwork that is actually my favorite of anything I found. But cool. Claudio himself didn't think it did enough detail and justice
for the story.
So he wanted to go back to that
something
before,
a little more narrative.
He wanted to go back to that before he went to finish the next story, which took many years and didn't finally get started until this last year.
So that's what hold off on doing a new album until there was some sort of visual for the first 4 albums?
No.
Okay, I misunderstood you.
All the visuals have been auxiliary. They've been supplementary to the music. The music has always been front and center, and then when
later
they really
on
have time, they go back and present everything that you need to really understand the details of the lyrics.
Okay. Right. So, with the comics, the album for the first album, Second Stage Turbine Blade, came out in 2002. Mm-hmm. The comic book didn't come out until...
I thought it was 2004.
Well, here's it. Because I have the trade here. It says 2010. I'm pretty sure that could be just for the trade.
That was when they reissued the collection of all 12 volumes. I think they originally didn't start making comics until 2004.
2004 sounds about right. Yeah. I have a few of those.
So I had always understood it that the comic was something that had kind of always been there, but it actually came out later, but not that much later. They were still in the throes of the story.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And the comic, now is the comic supplementary material about other characters, or is it the actual story from the album?
Yes.
Yeah, it is the story from the album. Yeah. And the great thing about Coheed and Cambria is that the lyrics are very enigmatic. You can read them, and you can kind of understand what they're going for, but it's really kind of word salad at times, where it doesn't make that much sense. If you looked at the chorus of one of the songs on the first album, it literally says, "I need mayo. I won't fail you now.
Yeah.
Dear Captain, send the SOS. We're going to go down." And
I need mayo?
Yes. Yeah. So you're thinking, is this guy hypoglycemic? Does he need a sandwich? Are they on a boat? It doesn't make any real sense. But then you go to the comics, and Mayo is the character who is the evil henchman next under the really bad guy of the story.
Gotcha.
And he's talking to him, and it's not just you singing along to a nonsense phrase.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But it just hits you so well in the song that you don't care. It's like when you hear lyrics to a song and you think, oh yeah, I'm gonna sing it like this, and then you read the actual words and that doesn't really make sense, but I like the way I'm singing it because it just works. That's just kind of the way Coheed kind of happens,
Okay.
It seems like it doesn't make any sense, but then if you take the time to look, there's more to it, and that is why they have, all the comics for you to go into and really get the full meaning of the songs if you want. You don't have to.
Gotcha.
It's just there if you want it.
Yeah, and what's really cool is for the first part of the story, which is the last album in the storyline that they released.
Right.
Because it's all confusing. Instead of doing a comic book, they did a novel.
Oh.
And the novel's written by Peter David.
Yes.
Who's done all sorts of Hulk comic books.
Incredible Hulk, yes.
And X Factor and all sorts of
And he did
he's been in the industry.
Too.
Yeah.
Peter David also collaborated with him, I think, in the 2010 release for a Second Stage Turbine Blade.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
Any particular artists on that are of note? Or?
I think so. Let me check here.
I would have to defer to B-Rom. I have not looked too much into the artists. I do know the current artist that's working with the Good Apollo Volume 1 reissue is Rags Morales.
Oh, yes. It says here on the comic book there.
Rags Morales.
Yeah, artists here. Oh, there's a bunch of them. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Gus Vasquez, Mike Miller, Gabriel Guzman. And nope, those are colors. So that's for...
And Claudio
second
Sanchez
stage.
writes all of these.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the creative mastermind behind the entire Amory Wars. In fact, the street he grew up on was called Amory, if I'm not mistaken. That in itself is an allusion to, his past. The characters of Coheed and Cambria, which is kind of the big thing, is whenever you say, oh, I like the band Coheed and Cambria, and the people would say, oh, is that just like two people, like a duet or something, Simon and Garfunkel? And you're like, no.
Nah.
It's actually like two characters in a story, and they actually kind of die by the end of the first album.
Wait. Are Coheed and Cambria characters in the Amory Wars?
Exactly.
Yes.
They are the parents to the Claudio character.
Yes.
And they are direct references to his own parents.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So one of the main plot devices in the story is that the Coheed character, he has a virus inside of him that gets triggered by this dragonfly needle coat creation.
Hence the dragonfly
insignia. That was one of the key logos behind it, is that there's these dragonflies that activate this virus that turns them into a complete monster, essentially.
Oh, cool.
It's called the Monstar virus, and that is referenced in the song, and that's a direct reference to how his father, battled heroin addiction, actually. So the needle,
and not
yes, exactly.
to Space Jam's nemesis.
No, not at all. Not the Monstars.
No.
But it could. I mean, he has a lot of random references thrown in there.
But yeah, okay, so the Monstar virus, and so this has to do with the needle.
The needle, and then the dragonfly image that is very ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay.
it's everywhere.
Cool. That is super cool. Okay, so back to the album order, because we're still working on that. We got the whole main story.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went back and did a prequel.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was kind of confusing because they didn't really quite say what it exactly was, other than that it was in the universe, but it didn't have anything to do with any of the current characters from the series. And you kind of figure out that
Gotcha. So this is
it's a
something maybe
prequel.
leading to where the Monstar virus came from, or something like that, or...
That's more in Year of the Black Rainbow, which is the first volume of the actual story.
Is that fifth album?
That was the fifth album.
That's the one that came with the novel.
So the Ultra prequels, which would be the Afterman, which is 2 albums, which is Ascension and Dissension, go over a character named Cyrus Amory, who the Amory Wars, the universe is effectively named at, and he's the guy who discovers what is called the keywork. And the keywork is the insignia that is the band's logo. If you were to have a picture, you would see that it is a triangle. It has 7 circles surrounding it. And this is the podcast. And I'm so excited that I got to say that for the first time. There's a podcast, and if you were to see that there is a triangle, there is a small circle in the center. There are then 3 other circles on each side of the triangle, and 3 large circles that are encircling the points of the triangle. And that represents the keywork. And the basis behind the story is that the universe takes place in what is called Heaven's Fence. And Heaven's Fence is a collection of 78 different planets that are all connected by 7 very large stars, one of which being called Star 4, which is referenced later. And they're connected by this large beam of energy that, provides, transport. It provides, energy to, power the planets themselves.
Gotcha. Right. Like warp, what are they called? Warp pathways in Star Wars, or like the gateways. Hyperspace lanes.
But actually physical...
Or more, okay, so more like
energies.
the gate system in Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
Yeah, I can
Like
see
it's
that.
kind of like a space freeway.
Yeah.
It's used that way as well.
You get on and...
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's kind of how all the planets are connected, and that's what that triangle represents on their logo.
Nice.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And the real kind of kicker behind it is that they find, especially in the Afterman album, is that the real energy source is actually, this is kind of the Soylent Green is people moment, is that it's actually powered by the souls of people who've died in the universe.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in that album, the character Cyrus Amory, he enters this space, and then he gets possessed by a series of different spirits, and each song represents that person's tormented life beforehand.
Oh,
it's a very dark album.
It is.
You're giving me a lot of information here that is, would be considered, I suppose, kind of spoilery, but it's also exciting. Is there a lot more to this beyond what you're talking about as well that still would
There's a lot of
shock
different
me and
characters.
excite me?
There's a lot of, I guess they're angels, sort of protectors of the universe.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of detail beyond this. And we're just kind of giving brief highlights of behind the plot, but there's so much more. It's like if you were to just tried your best to make an album to describe the Clone Wars, but so much is happening in the Clone Wars, you can't get it all in an hour and 20 minutes.
Right.
So there's so much more detail, but a lot of the story, incorporates dialogue, describes very epic climactic scenes, and which is what I alluded to earlier, is that Coheed and Cambria, the band, they've really mastered this great technique that I think really started more in the 80s, where when you think of the standard song structure, you think the climax of the song is usually the chorus. That happens, 3 times, so there's multiple climaxes.
There's a bridge, but
yeah, sure. If you want to argue from the guitar player standpoint, the guitar solo is obviously the climax. But it's usually that can happen anywhere, though. Coheed has mastered this technique, which is called terminally climactic song structure.
Okay.
Where they will go through, and they're a very progressive rock band. All the albums sound very different from one another.
Okay.
Even songs within the album can sound very different. And inside of a song, they will have multiple, like a suite, where they have a beginning slow section, and then that can change into a completely different type of song within it. But a lot of times, they will end on a single section at the end, the terminally climactic part, where you have this really grand sort of, there's overlapping, lines, kind of
like
lyrics.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So there's, exactly. They totally do that sort of, that fugue scene where, you have multiple, lines of lyrics that build on top of each other. You have multiple guitar lines that are interweaving together.
Nice.
It gets this beautiful wall of sound, and it ends the song on that. So you go from the beginning to this grand ending, and then you just want to keep going. I mean, examples of this would be, I think, Everything Evil in the first album.
Yeah.
The Crowing is a beautiful, one of the best endings to any song is incredible.
And the live is just like,
it's just
amazing.
It builds, and that's the thing. It's like, and that's that started in the 80s, I think. If you think of, I don't know, like November Rain, the ending of the song, the climax, or the quintessential Freebird ending.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody. You're getting to a very specific endpoint where you are constantly on a build to this amazing grand finale, and that happens multiple times through the album, and it really is painting this word painting. It's giving you a story to think about instead of just passively listening to a song.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but again,
for me, that's something that really interests me as a listener as well, because I like the structure of Welcome Home, but I don't necessarily know if that's the quintessential sound of Coheed and Cambria or not.
That's one of their heavier songs. It is and it isn't, because they've done so much with their music.
Yeah, but for me, from a musician standpoint and from a listener standpoint of somebody who really does like to explore music, it's cool because obviously I'm geeking out about this concept of this really high sci-fi system going on and this whole story and all this extra structure, but musically that's also really cool because that's not something that I never considered that about Coheed and Cambria. I just assumed it was power metal ballads with a really high squeaky voice.
And to be fair, the high-pitched voice, I feel like that goes back to classic, Italian opera from a couple hundred years ago, where you have the high soprano males. They actually had what are called castratas. You can imagine surgically enhanced singers, who were rock stars of their day, mind you, and that high pitch, that sort of
abstinent rock stars
that goes over the much lower, deeper sort of metal vibe. It works for me.
Yeah,
they've been compared to Geddy Lee and Rush, who's also progressive.
I was gonna say I can't complain that much. I love Rush.
Yeah,
I don't love him as much, but I do love post Bon Scott AC/DC. Who Made Who is one of my favorites, and that guy's got one of the most obnoxious voices, but I dig it. Same thing with Geddy Lee. So, obviously, I have a tendency to listen to music with some strange vocals. Supertramp is another example, but other, a little more far out.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan has a weird sound.
Yeah.
Very weird. Even I'm not a Bob Dylan guy. But
Neil Young has a really, really high, annoying voice, and I love him. So, I guess I can't be too harsh on it.
Yeah.
It just is a different combination that I'm used to, I guess.
And there's something to be said about them taking very, very dark subject material and adding a very poppy spin to it.
Yeah.
there's some really,
Dark Red Summer?
Dark Red Summer is a very disturbing song if you read about it.
Yeah.
But it's done in a major key, and he's got this happy-go-lucky, there's, like, cheerleaders clapping in the background. It's one of the most poppy songs ever.
Oh, yeah, and it's fairly dark.
It kind of adds to that dark twist to them, is that there's this really happy guy singing over it, and it just kind of, like, grabs you if you're willing to just kind of, like, follow down
and that was part of their plan, too, because they're like, we could do this, but... this is something different, and we're gonna.
Yeah, and that's I think a nice contrast, which makes it interesting.
Yeah,
all right,
that's fair.
And something we touched on earlier was the meta element that happens in Good Apollo Volume 1.
Volume 1.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Which is probably, it's one of my favorite things where they really...
Does the band show up?
They step... Oh, kind of. I mean, they step outside of the narrative because they introduce a character called the Writer. And the Writer is effectively the God character. They reference God obliquely throughout the entire storyline, but this is where you find out that the God character, the Writer, is actually the person who's physically writing the story as you go along, which is another allusion to Claudio in a different form.
Right.
And this guy is crazy.
Yeah, he's manic depressive.
It is one of the most manic albums.
A little about his process and the things he struggles with.
Yeah, and the things going on in his life that's affecting the story. So it's like extra meta with Claudio going through similar stuff. Obviously not as crazy, but he's put it into this character, and this character is writing. I'm doing air quotes right now. It's a podcast. You can't see it. Is writing the story, and I got the comic right here, and you can see it in the last couple pages. Like you can flip through the first.
Oh, I like that he's like shirtless and crazy writing on the ground on the cover.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the healthiest...
We will probably post some of these images when we post this on our Facebook also. If you're looking for references, you can find them there.
Yeah. I would say this is one of the healthiest examples of displacement that you can imagine, in that, or even, this person, he's dealing in real life with the worst breakup at the time.
And literal demons.
And yes, he instead takes that creative energy, and now he decides that he's going to write basically the world's greatest prog rock breakup album. So this character that he's writing through experiences, what you'd get through a breakup of, I really love this person, I don't want them to go, and then a second later, I want to kill this person. It just goes...
The last line of it is to kill you all.
Yes, that is the ending of one of the most sweetest lullabies you've ever heard in your life. That's just beautiful. And then it ends with this twist, like, what?
Yeah.
What? And then Welcome Home launches into that. And it just, hits you. It's so cinematic. Yeah. It is beyond anything. So, and then this character, the Writer, he is now deciding, he's going back and forth, how do I deal with these characters in the story? How do I deal with my own love life? And he decides, through this god power that he has, he physically enters into the story through what is called the Willing Well, which is described in a 4-part suite, which is 30 minutes long. Which is excellent.
Oh my gosh.
And then he decides that he's going to end the story the way he wants, directly, and kills off a character, mortally wounds another one, and then just kind of pieces out with his 10-speed bicycle demon friend.
Which is another single of theirs.
Yeah, and one of the characters that he himself creates as a hallucination, but is also kind of morphs into a real character, is a literal 10-speed bicycle that literally tells him to just kill them all.
Yeah.
Just as a very psychotic element to this character.
It's a very strange album.
That is, that's a little weird.
But if you're into it, it just hits on every level. They have the best defining guitar work, I think, across their entire catalog on the album. I think it's listed in the top 100 guitar albums of all time, in fact.
Wow. Yeah. I do love me some good guitar, like Eric Johnson,
so
what is it, Cliffs of Dover?
Fantastic.
That's some good driving music is what that is.
Mm-hmm. And there's more to be said, I feel like, just little elements that make this extra cinematic. If I'm not sure how familiar you are with what they call leitmotifs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this started, for all the listeners, this is back, opera times. This was, I think, Wagner doing what he's called the ring cycle. And this is where, before you see a character enter on stage, they play a little snippet of music, and they're there. This is referenced in Star Wars, for example, where you hear bum, 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 ba-dun, dun, 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 and you kind of know, Darth Vader's coming around.
Yeah.
So they do that.
Yeah.
Coheed does the same exact thing. They have repeated motifs that start from, literally the first theme you hear on the first album, first song, gets echoed in later albums.
Yeah.
In even grander, symphonic arrangements, too.
With orchestras.
Hidden within other,
I was going to ask, okay, because one of my favorite things about Rogue One was how they hid Vader's theme, or rather the Imperial March, into the final song. I think Hope. They worked it into Hope. It's just like slightly off key and really slow, or was it really fast? I don't even remember. But it's in there. So do they continue these motifs for these characters? Because that's also a big thing they do in Steven Universe, but they do it with instrumentation instead. Do they do that as well? Or?
Very similar. Yeah.
They do that. There's another similar theme that is the intro song to the second album that they bring back in further albums later on and more grandiose.
And there's a clip of piano notes that they'll use that's representing time.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah. So, but that happens on every album. In fact, it's on one of their newer songs they just put out. At the end of the song,
which we will get to in a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was really cool when people heard it, and then it's very faint at the end. If you get done with the song and you're like, okay, that was really cool, and they're still kind of playing out, and you're kind of like skipping over it, and then you kind of like realize what it is. You're like, oh shit, cool.
They are a big fan of Easter eggs, especially in the very first few albums. There was always a hidden bonus track that if you let play for such period of time, 5 minutes or longer, then a hidden track would reveal itself. That's an extra part of the storyline. And some songs would even just, in a sharp cut, there'd be like a sharp cut where you're in just the middle of this happy-go-lucky song, and all of a sudden it cuts to Blood Red Summer from the previous album.
Yeah,
so they will make random cuts, and when those hit, you're like, oh my god, that's what's getting you to that. It's all actually connected, and it just kind of keeps you waiting and hungering for kind of more.
Okay, so have we gone through all of the Amory War story at this point? Do we have one more album?
So we finished off
because we did the one prequel, and then we went all the way to episode 5. Yeah, and then the next thing that came out was the non-album.
Yes.
Right. So before we get to that, I have a question.
Sure.
Is it really obvious when you're listening to this stuff, or are there like threads and people all over the place trying to figure this out and piece it together like a puzzle?
I would say more like the second. It's a lot easier now because they've gone back to pretty much everything and provided you the actual material.
Context,
but the one missing thing that I mentioned earlier was that Volume 2 of Good Apollo and Burning Star 4 still doesn't have any official complete visual or novelization to give you that definitive thing. So it kind of keeps you like, a bad gambler at the table. George R. Martin not releasing the last 2 books. You're like, come on, get to it. Yeah. But Claudio is almost done with the reissue of Volume 1, so after that, hopefully, he will go on to that and actually complete.
Yeah, although it's very cool because they'll do album breakdowns and he'll say what's going on with the story as each song is going on. Gotcha. Sometimes they're hard to find, but they're on YouTube. But again, like you have to sit and look for them.
Is it like commentary or is it like here's a pamphlet?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Depending on the song, depending on the album and what they're going for the interview. Gotcha. But he's very open about what's going on with the story at the time and what it involves. So that's kind of cool that he's not leaving it to like your imagination like he is, but he's still like
Did people argue when this first came out over like what they thought certain songs meant to the story?
They had fan pages, the Cobalt and Calcium fan page, where they were just threads of everyone trying to figure out what exactly does this lyric mean, how does this fit. There's like Reddit subthreads I've seen of people just going through.
Sounds like the Silent Hill fandom.
Yeah, I mean, they have their own like fandom wiki page that has everything, but it stops at a specific point, which is Volume 2, which we're all waiting for like that final story to come in. And what they did a good job is starting actually with The Year of the Black Rainbow is that they started these deluxe packages where they will give you the novelization or, their artwork behind it with the album. So that way you can listen to it, you could follow along, and they make it really streamlined from that point on. He owns his own comic company, Evil Ink Comics. You can go on the website. You could find all this stuff there. Or you could find it on Amazon too.
Yeah. Or if you're at a Comic-Con like we were, you get him at the booth. Yeah. I actually got Claudio's autograph 3 or 4 years ago at Comic-Con, and he was just sitting in his booth. There wasn't a line. I just walked right up, and he was super cool. We talked for a quick minute. I got Jacob a signed copy of one of the issues actually for his birthday, who just texted me. It was really sad that he's not with us right now talking about it with us. Sorry, buddy. I still love you.
I still love you too.
I do have to geek out because there's so few times I can actually say this to people who appreciate it. I have seen them 4 times, all very different. Yeah. 2 of these times was when they did what is called the Never Ender tour, where they now, at the 10-year anniversary of these albums, will play them from start to finish in entirety live.
Do they have visuals to go along with it to watch?
Sometimes in the background. They even had a complete album done a few years ago where they did the 3 albums they had at the time, and they did them. One day was Second Stage Turbine Blade. Next day was the next album.
They played in the city for 3 or 4 days.
I'm sorry, it was 4 in a row,
So it's like going and seeing the Valkyrie.
Basically.
So they have the DVD. And so it's cool. So they did the album, and they did kind of a best of, like, last 10 minutes of the show, 10, 15 minutes they played.
For those of you who don't know, the Valkyrie is such a long opera that it is often done in multiple nights.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how they did it.
Yeah.
So I went to
And
two
this
of
is
these,
really
right?
like a modern opera.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It's a
really
space
is, yeah.
opera.
That's super cool because like,
It's a rock opera. It's a comic book rock opera.
Imagined that that's what was going on because I mean it's got like
under the scenes.
You've got the hero's journey. You've got these songs that are like I mean you
these guys can play their instruments,
but also
and they are fantastic musicians. Arguably,
from everything you've told me, this guy's understanding of music is much like somebody who might compose an opera.
Oh, totally,
which is really cool that he has this all working in, and he has these leitmotifs and these like little hints to fugues and these throwbacks to these other things. That's incredible.
And I think he isn't.
This is the thing. In interviews, if you go back to, I believe it is the behind-the-scenes DVD of, I'm pretty sure it's The Afterman, he himself says that he has no music theory training behind any of this.
Yeah.
He's doing all
Screw this guy.
I'm telling you, this is like where it breaks like down everything you know, but like, oh my god, like he's doing everything he's doing, making beautiful harmonies, building guitar lines, all just from what sounds right.
Yeah.
And that's what he's done.
Well, he apparently has done it incredibly well.
Yeah.
And like B-Rom, I got to meet the band, the whole band, at one of these Neverenders. I bought this birthday gift to myself 6 months in advance.
Was that the one last year?
No, this was a few years ago. It was the Neverender for In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3.
Oh,
and I got to meet them briefly, shake all their hands, just geek out for a second.
Yeah.
And I out-nerded the drummer. Because there's a hidden track of that song, or of that album called 2113, which is a specific time in military for 9:13 at night. And the concert started a little after 7, so I told them going in, I was like, you know guys, it would just be the greatest coincidence if you could play the song 2113 on 2113. And the drummer kind of looked at me, he was like, what? Like, he just didn't get it. And Claudio just looks at him, he's like, he's talking about the song, man. Like, he knew exactly what I was talking about. But the drummer was just like, I don't know, I'm just here to look good.
I'm just here to play drums.
Like, he was just riding it.
If that was during the Neverender series, that would have been Chris Penny, who is the second drummer who came in afterwards.
So, this actually kind of explains, why didn't they really work it to have enough time to do Volume 2 appropriately, is at the time there was a lot of lineup changes.
Yeah.
The original drummer, Josh Eppard, he left, and he was replaced by Chris Penny.
Yep.
But there was a conflict there, and he wasn't allowed to actually drum on their album.
So he can write the album. He wrote the album with the band, but he couldn't actually play on it. Guess who played on it?
Dave Grohl?
No.
Oh.
Close. Close. Taylor Hawkins.
Taylor Hawkins. I freaking love Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah.
So
He
technically,
played drums.
there is a Foo Fighters Coheed just in a relationship for that album alone.
Yeah.
He's playing the part written by Chris Penny, though.
I love Taylor Hawkins.
Yeah. He's so good.
He's
so amazing.
Cool.
Yeah. So of course I freaked out when I found out that was happening.
I did too.
And so
I was like, here.
Yeah.
You heard it first.
So there's a few, because they did a behind the scenes DVD for it. And it really sucks because he's not in there that much.
Uh-huh.
But there's a few shots of him playing or just like in the studio. And you're like, oh shit, it's him. It's really him.
And when they filmed exactly when they filmed the Neverender series, the 4-day concert epic, he's the drummer at the time.
Yeah.
And during the final cut, which is the closing blues like jam of that
they'll
song,
jam it out to 20 minutes.
I love a good jam.
It was
Dude,
23
we'll
minutes, and 7 of those at least was Chris Penny doing a drum solo the whole time, like John Bottom status.
Yeah.
And it was crushing. You see this picture of this guy holding like a beer, just like his jaw hitting the floor, like, oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so
and then you see like the band walk off stage to let him do his thing, and they're just chilling watching.
Real quick,
They
is
get
this
their
an
drinks
actual really good quality drum solo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Drum solos,
We'll throw it up later.
If you love, we would love to rewatch it.
Yeah.
I've seen it numerous times.
I'm a real skeptic of drum solos.
Chris Penny is
He's one of the best drummers.
He's like far technically superior to Josh Eppard, but Josh has got this great energy about him, and even Claudio says that he's his favorite drummer because he gives him so much energy to work with.
Yeah,
that he's just really exciting.
Who played on Welcome Home?
That was
Josh
original. Yeah.
Original guy.
So he ended up coming back later on.
Gotcha.
Much later on, before as Chris was leaving, but around the same time, their bass player Mike Todd got busted because he tried to rob a pharmacy
Yeah.
because he was addicted to painkillers, and then tried to go back to the show that night.
Yeah.
And they caught him.
Yeah.
And he was on house arrest for a long time, and they had to officially cut ties with him and everything.
It was bad. So actually, when I got Claudio's autograph at Comic-Con, it was that summer, and so you had this look.
So
on
he's like, I'm just chilling because what else am I gonna do?
Kind of, but also he, because I was there and there's a few other people coming up, and you could tell he was kind of nervous. He was like, "Don't ask about the bassist. Don't ask about the bassist." Not me,
Yeah.
but like he was just like, "Please, nobody ask about it." He didn't want to come out and say like, "Hey, I don't want to talk about it," because as soon as he did, people were going to start talking about it. And so you can tell he was very apprehensive about doing anything anyways to avoid it, but
yeah.
still a cool dude, like sat and talked.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That was huge. That was one of those moments, again, where you think, like, this is going to, like, fracture and break this band. It was just such an intense
And it wasn't.
story.
Question.
Yeah.
Yes.
You met the guy. I don't know why I didn't think to ask this earlier, but you met the guy. You met the guy.
Yeah.
What's his speaking voice sound like?
Normal. It's deep.
Yeah, he's kind of got a deep voice, so he kind of sings in falsetto.
Yeah, he sings it very well. Over the years, he's kind of tamed it down a little because it's hard to keep that level up.
That's gotta
like if you go back, if you go back and listen to A Favorite House Atlantic off the second album, it is the highest you'll ever hear from the beginning, and it's one of the first singles where people are like, "Yeah, I don't really like this. This is too high pitched." When he does that nowadays, it is like way probably an octave lower.
Like Paul McCartney.
Yeah,
it comes with age.
You just can't do it so much, and
they got a few songs like that, but they still pull it off.
Yeah, it's like early Prince. Like Prince sang so high that he rumored to have an album that he pretended to be a woman on. And they just put it in the vault. They were like, no.
That's right. Yeah,
they like pitched it a little bit, but like he sang it with like a woman style vocals, as it were. But like you listen to his later stuff, and he definitely leans more on. I mean, he still will do his like high pitched scream and stuff, which is great. But like. You have to. You can't keep that up forever.
Right.
Adele doesn't have her last album is not nearly as cracky as the first one was because that's dangerous for your vocal cords. So yeah, I get that. Okay. Yeah. And Welcome Home was on the third album?
That was the third album to be released, yes.
Okay, so then there was the fourth album, which is the second volume, and then there was the prequel album.
Yes.
Where they replaced the drummer.
Where they replaced the
Chris
drummer.
Penny's there now, but then shortly thereafter that was released was when they had replaced the bassist. Yeah. And before the next album, they had the replacement Zach Cooper. And that is, he's just, I think he was...
What did he do?
He was, I don't remember what bands he was with. He was actually...
No, what instrument did he do?
Oh, he's a bass player.
He
replaced Mike Todd. He was actually a virtual unknown at that point, but, they just knew him from, the New Jersey, New York scene, and they brought him on and auditioned him.
Freaking good.
He's been with, he's amazing. He's been with them ever since.
Yeah, ever since. Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, Chris Penny also left, and he was replaced with Josh Eppert again.
Drummer.
He came back from being away for a while.
Why did Josh Eppert leave in the first place?
Him and the bassist left at the same time. Then the bassist came back like a month later. But the drummer wanted to do his own thing. I think he's a rapper too.
I think there was some substance.
Some hip hop band
he had another project he wanted to work on. I respect that.
Yeah.
And that actually works perfectly because right as Mick Todd gets he's sent to jail and then house arrest. This is actually a period of time where the lead members of the band they started delving more into their side projects.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So Claudio's side project is called the Prize Fighter Inferno, which is based off of a character from the greater storyline. Yeah. And this story takes place even further in the past.
Yeah.
And
isn't it on Earth, too?
It's on Earth. It's it has almost nothing really to do, I think, with the greater story, but it's narrated by that character who dies partway through the main storyline, but he's sort of a robot. He's got some extra things going on about him.
Cool.
It's very...
Yes.
Yeah. It's a very sci-fi story.
It's cool, too, that he's doing... that they've done this much, because... the concept of building a universe cinematically that is really, really broad is relatively new. I mean, we just had the Alien universe get, things like Prometheus and stuff, which are very on the side.
Right.
And the Marvel universe, of course, and the DC universe. But it's not super common. The Cloverfield one, that's another one. It's not super common that we have, like, a barely a side tie-in, except for maybe the Bond films.
Yeah.
And a few other, but even still, you're never gonna see like, coming this summer, Moneypenny. Like you're not gonna see that. But like this concept of let's explore all the avenues of where this universe can go he's kind of ahead of his time in that regard. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And even on that, he had two albums with the side album with Price for Inferno, he's done 2 albums with them. The second was like a smaller EP, but one of those songs it's called Half Measures, and the whole lyrics are about Mike Todd being like imprisoned basically. And it's kind of like an ode to him, and it's like one of the most beautiful songs that he.
Oh wow!
I still have it on repeat. Album. Yeah. It's And then at the same token, he has a song that's basically the romantic perspective of Freddy Krueger on Nightmare on Elm Street. So he just kind of works with it.
You work with what you got, I guess.
Yeah, he's kind of all over the map sometimes. But
now, did he have a problem with prescription pills as well? Because I noticed that was a problem in the Amory Wars, Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4. There's an issue he's having a little bit in there in a couple of the panels. Did that come up for him as well?
I think him personally, he's done very well. Like, he's seen it in his family and with other people that he himself, I don't think there's any, documented substance abuse problems. His real creative outlet has been through the music and the comics, and that's been his, his healthy alternative.
Right. But with his family, he definitely has plenty to pull from if he wants to add that in as a part of it.
And then this is the great thing. Remember how I said that horrible breakup album, which was, the really climax of like his most negative time? That woman that it was about is now his wife.
Yeah.
And she sings with the band and sometimes they do duets together.
She co-writes the comics.
Yeah, they're like a major team now. So it seems a bit awkward to me that, when she's there singing background vocals to, like, I want you to die right now. Will you drink my chemical? Just like these horrible lines that are about like wanting to murder her in a very healthy way now.
Yeah.
She's there singing with him.
Yeah.
A music video I worked on 2 years ago. The woman who wrote it was hanging out with her ex, and they decided to go to a concert. And as they walked into the concert, the song she co-wrote for said concert, because she helped with the artist that they were working on. Like, they walked in as they were playing basically her breakup song with her ex that she was hanging with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're going to throw that out into the world, I guess you got to kind of expect it.
Yeah.
It's cool that they've made it through that terrible time.
Yeah. And then ultimately we came to The Color Before the Sun, which is their album, where it's an album.
It's just a regular album, no storyline attachment.
I'm surprised they kept the Coheed and Cambria thing. I wonder if
well, it's interesting because for a while, they didn't put out an album for a little while. Like, what are they doing? Because they said they're not breaking up, but they're going to try something new. Yeah. They didn't have anything for a while, and they put out the album. I really liked it. There's some really good songs on there. It was a little short, at like 10 songs.
Now, you had told me about this earlier. You said when it came out, it was a little sad because it was kind of like seeing the next project of somebody after your show's been canceled. And you're like, oh, you're really moving on? Are you sure?
Yeah. And that was my whole thought was it's basically, when you hear that Star Wars is officially ended, they finished the trilogy, there's no more, and then you just kind of going on to the next thing with George Lucas, begrudgingly, like, I really wish we can go back.
Yeah.
It's like, this is good and all, but that other stuff was really cool.
Yeah, like, I appreciate, like, you still can crush it. You guys are really good at this, but I'm missing that concept album a little bit. It would be great, but, Claudio said numerous times over the years, the whole story's over. Like, there's no room to go back.
Done,
Now, when they did this album, did people try to see if it fit in somewhere? And
I'm sure they did.
Oh, I did. I like to pretend sometimes that those songs can fit into the very thing.
Yeah. Special edition.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can use your own imagination to work it anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're still a great band. That you can't change that they're incredible musicians at each of their given talents.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Exactly.
So then you were sad for a while.
I was sad for a while.
About 3 years ago.
I buried my head in a lot of books for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then
what did you listen to in the meantime?
I didn't listen to much Coheed for a while. I felt like, I'm focusing on, being in medical school. I just kind of put Pandora on, was just listening to random stuff, trying to spread my wings a little. And then the announcement came out a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Because Coheed started being really cryptic. They were posting things on social media.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, they just had, just instrumental piano music, some really creepy, like, imagery, like, is this kind of like...
what's going on?
They didn't play like a time motif,
This looks like they're starting in, like, Saw 10, or, like, I don't know what's happening here. And then they announced that they are going back to that universe, and in what is now called Vaxis, which is not just a 4-parter, it is a 5-parter, Act 1 through 5 ultimately, which is the greatest thing. It's like when they tell you, oh hey, episode 7 is coming out in a couple years, and you're just overwhelmed with this rush of joy and excitement and happiness.
Or
and
like
it feels
when they
so good to be
announced
back.
That the Clone Wars was coming back.
Oh, yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yes. and because of you guys, I started watching those episodes. I'm slowly getting through season 1 in the little time
Brian
I have.
and I literally cried.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We were in a panel and we literally cried.
Yeah. Along with everybody else.
I mean, everybody
man.
was in there ugly crying.
Yeah.
We told Dave Filoni that we ugly cried. Actually.
Yeah, we saw him later
we
on,
saw
yeah.
him as we were walking past.
Oh my god, I can't even imagine.
That's another
It's
podcast.
incredible.
So that's another podcast, which is probably out this week. Hopefully.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then they made their announcement. What have they released?
They've released thus far like
3 songs.
technically 4 songs.
Right.
Because there's a
But with
prologue.
3 music videos, and now they're doing what's really interesting is that they're providing like music videos for everything that they're releasing instead of just the MP4 audio file. They're giving you the direct visualization, and unlike some other music videos, which have very loose connection to the actual story, this is like you're straight up watching it as if it's like a movie.
Neat.
Yeah.
So we watched one earlier.
Yeah. We had one on
did.
earlier, and you see some cool spaceships and some cool bounty hunter alien looking things.
It's not super detail in the animation, but the artwork itself is
gorgeous.
really beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
the image we've had up on the screen, so this is a podcast, there's an image up on the screen, and it's got this like super cool, it almost looks like somebody blew up the moon, put it back together, and pretended that it was Starkiller Base.
Yeah.
Very much.
Is it a weird lens thing?
But it probably is less easy to just destroy. But whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't speak with total certainty about what happened in the end of the final album because there's no real written story to describe it. But you can pretty much gather that the Claudio character has, defeated everyone, but part in doing so, he had to essentially sacrifice himself and destroy the entire keywork to release all of the souls so they're no longer enslaved. But that kind of destroys the rest of everything.
Right. Because again, everything's being held together by
the keywork. But that's gone now.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil for their society to function at that moment.
Yeah. So now it's kind of picking up in that universe. Those characters who were previously there, I'm assuming they're all gone. They had to die. Pretty much they all died.
Do we know if there's a time jump?
I don't know if they've stated how much further ahead in time it has to be.
I haven't really looked on the new album too much.
Yeah, so. It could be a few years. I'm assuming it's just, these survivors who are, just scrambling around for resources and fighting in this bloodbath to kind of, stake claim and gain civilization in sort of like a Mad Max kind of way.
Nice. Yeah. I can dig on that.
Yeah.
Again, every new album has like a new sort of like theme that's attached to it in a way. There's usually a new style in which they are playing, but they're very much the same. They have the similar musical themes that they play with. Lyrics, they always have, the same kind of like running line that goes through the Amory Wars, which is like, what have I done? What did I do to deserve all of this or deserve all of you? He kind of echoes the same line throughout everything, and I'm excited to see them take some of those elements from previous albums and work them. And they already started where you hear like faintly the time traveling motif. They don't make it super obvious all the time. They kind of make you work a little for it, and that makes it extra rewarding when you can you catch out the Easter eggs because you've gone through this whole catalog thus far.
Right. Okay, so as somebody who has not gone through this catalog so far, there's a few questions I have. One, if I went on Spotify, which all this music is available on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music, I'm sure.
Well, Amazon Music, I looked this up. They do not have all the albums. They specifically have, go to Apollo Volume 1, you have to upgrade and buy the unlimited version to get access to those songs because it's clearly the most popular. But all the other ones are there. That's kind of their way of getting you to fork over the extra dough. Right. But I went to YouTube and they're all still there.
They're all on YouTube.
Even all of Never Ender and their albums, live concerts, they're all there.
Okay. Yeah. So either way, if I go to one of these music streaming sites, do you, to get just a taste of this, recommend listening to just a few of their hits, or would you say dive into the albums and just go start to finish? Would you say start to finish chronologically or start to finish release order? This is the same question we have with Star Wars all the time. So what's the order?
Because you don't really get a feel for the story. You get a little bit of a feel for the story as you're listening. So you could go out of order or go like chronological order, but you could also just do release order too.
Yeah, I think if you really want to just get a feel for the band, you've heard literally nothing of them. Yeah, you could listen to the singles and see if this is the kind of band I'm interested in hearing more about. And if you choose to want to explore it you can go however way you want, because again, every album has its own feel. So the very first one that was released is a lot more sort of hardcore, a lot like, there's more kind of screaming as an effect in the background. It's a bit jarring to get into, but if you started at a later album, even just the second or third, they're a bit more approachable in a manner too. Yeah. So you don't always have to start exactly in order. Okay. Yeah, and their style morphs, so there could be one of these albums that really speaks to you, and you don't necessarily have to have started at the beginning to get there. It's really up to you how you like to approach it. And if you do think, oh, there's a lot more to this, there's a story behind it, maybe I'll start in the beginning. You can totally do that.
Right. And you don't have to start with album 1 to start that story. You can go back and do this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And by album 1, I mean...
Second stage.
The second stage, Turbine Blade.
The second stage. Yeah. Because, because on Spotify, like, the most popular ones right off the bat are, like, Welcome Home, The Dark Sentencer, Favorite House Atlantic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, these are songs that, like, at least 2 of them I've heard before, but never in this context and never with this mindset that I should listen to what they're talking about. And even still, if I did listen to Welcome Home to understand what they were talking about, like, it's going to take some time for me to listen to it before I can even understand what the guy's saying. Yeah. At some point, he might mention mayonnaise, and I don't even know what that's about.
Yeah, still a good song. It's a great song.
Yeah.
But, okay, so your favorites, then, that's the next question. You're like, if you're going to be like, okay, this is the album that I was like, oh, I am in it for the long haul from here on out. No question.
I would say the third one.
Good Apollo Volume 1?
Or no, the second one, which
the third
is
episode.
The third episode. That's why.
Keeping Secrets.
In Keeping Secrets. Yeah, that was the first album of theirs I heard all the way through and like really loved.
Got it.
And then I heard Second Stage, and then that's when Good Apollo Part 1 came out, and that's pretty much a lot of fans' like most favorite one. And that I get bored halfway through because it's a really long. It's a good album. Don't get me wrong. It's just really long, and my ADD kicks in. I'm like, okay, what else is going on?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am very much a firm believer, and I stand behind Good Apollo Volume 1 through and through. It is my album that speaks to me. I could sit and hear it all the way through, or I could jump in at any one song, and I love every song. And I'm the kind of person who, in a given band, I like maybe 2 or 3 songs. I don't usually sit and listen to an entire album.
Yeah.
For Coheed and Cambria, I can put on any one of their albums and feel like I could just listen to it start to finish and really enjoy the entire experience. And the one I get the most out of it is the third album, which is Good Apollo Volume 1.
Gotcha.
And as a guitar player and like having, spent many hours learning the songs myself and really appreciating the intricacies and just the crushing chord progressions and solos that they have, it's just like, it totally speaks to me on that level too.
Right on.
And just that meta element of stepping outside and like interacting with the story, it's got so much that's like new but still really speaks to you on like a basic level.
Okay.
So that is my definitive personally, but everyone has their own opinion. I've talked to people who started from literally like 2002, and they swear that Second Stage Turbine Blade is like their album.
Yeah.
Sure. Everybody's got a doctor.
Yeah.
And some people could have just started a couple years ago and say, hey, Color Before the Sun, nothing related to the concept, and I love these songs.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. We ain't gonna judge on that. I get you. Do you feel like they improved in skill as time went by, or do you think each one has a really good... Because if I start listening to their fourth album, which is the first in the story, and then I switch from that into their first album, which is the second in the story, as I'm going through progressing linear or chronologically, am I gonna be like, whoa,
thrown off a little bit?
We're not
really
rocking as hard as we could, or maybe we're rocking way too hard.
Not necessarily. Like as most bands do, like they get better in their instrument as they're playing.
Yeah. Sure. And sometimes getting better doesn't necessarily mean that the song improves so much as it just changes. Yeah. Because some bands, like, I mean, the sound of the Foo Fighters and their earlier stuff, I wouldn't say is nearly as technically fantastic, but it has a certain grittiness to it that I really love.
Yeah.
So
kind of that post grunge world, and now it's more of just a rock kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, they've kind of defined their genre as it is, but that's another podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, of course, if it's been 10 years from the first released album to the first chronological album, there's going to be different production value. They've definitely...
Especially on that first album.
Yeah, and Year of the Black Rainbow is probably one of their most, I would say, it's very well produced. That like the feeling that you get in the very first song like carries in every single song from that point onward. Some people would argue that I didn't like that one as much for this such reason, but it's still, as an album, like everything feels very well connected.
I love a good cohesive album.
they're all very cohesive, and that's what, that's why they really stand the test of time, I think. And the big thing is that since every album has its own feel, you can listen to them in any number of an order, really, and like you're always going to expect that it's going to sound different than where you came from, and no matter what way.
All right, so, okay, you sold me. I mean, I was sold probably about half an hour ago. But, all right, I like, especially with all the music motifs and all the complications in it and the fact that it does change sound a lot. Yeah. That's my jam, because I put things on shuffle all the time, and I like having multiple kind of genres going in there. And if we're going to bend the genre multiple ways, I'm just as happy as with that. Yeah. Okay, so then the second question I have is, what do you recommend reading order? Now that we have a comic book attached to this.
I mean, reading order, it makes more sense to do it chronologically within the story, because it's the actual story.
Do you recommend skipping? Oh, you can't skip Good Apollo because there's nothing after it.
Right.
Yeah, but if you want, you could technically go back and you could start with The Afterman, which is the first in the real Amory War story that has a visual aid behind it.
Yeah.
Then you can go forward from there.
Not necessarily the characters themselves, but the whole universe, so you kind of get a good little background.
Okay. So then you could read the novelization.
Yeah, so you can read the novelization, which sets up the actual characters of Coheed and Cambria, which aren't in the later...
And that's with Ascension and Dissension, or is that...
So, at the Afterman, Ascension and Dissension is about Cyrus Amory, who was really discovering this entire, framework of what we're going to delve into later albums.
There's the triangles.
Yeah. The first CD that describes, the Amory Wars, which is Year of the Black Rainbow, describes the creation of these characters, Coheed and Cambria, the people who developed them. You were starting to learn about who the evil bad guy is, Wilhelm Ryan and his henchmen, and what they're kind of up to, which sets us up for where we start chronologically with the second stage, Turbine Blade, where at this point, we now know these characters, so when we actually lose some of them by the end of that album, it feels much more emotional instead of just, oh wow, they're already gone, huh? Yeah. Well, the band still has their name, so that was weird. Why did we care about them? Yeah. It's like, why doesn't J.K. Rowling make a band called, James and Lily Potter? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, and it just ties everything together.
Okay, so we got 4 main stories then, right? We've got the Amory story, and that would be...
Ascension, Dissension.
And then we have the...
Amory Wars.
The Amory Wars, which is basically albums... 1 through 4, or
1 through technically 5, but there's 4 volumes.
Right, and then we have the meta storyline of what's going on with the writer.
Yeah, which is worked in with one of them.
And then we have the story on Earth as well.
Yeah,
in the side projects.
If you want to go there as well. Yeah, cool. And now we have the continuation with the Vaxxus, which is going to be 5 acts.
Which 5 acts.
So is it 5 albums?
I believe so.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
And, they're this far in their career, 15 plus years. Yeah. And they're
it's not just going to be a 5th song after this, and they're going to be like, that's it.
They're going to do one album that's Act 1, and then a second album that's Acts 2 through 5.
Yeah.
Guys, this bit off more than we can chew.
Yeah. But you know what, they've done stuff like that with songs where they theme it after whatever character or storyline for a second. Like they have...
Are you talking about like the suites?
Yeah, like the suites.
And that's another element of them expanding, is that in the first album, Second Stage Turbine Blade, there aren't any suites. It's just, the 10 plus songs, and then you're good. You have a hidden track, and it's fine. The second album, they have a suite at the end called the Camper Valorium, where there's 3 songs that describe an entire series of events towards the end of the story. That's neat. And then in Good Apollo, when I describe the Willing Well, which is how he enters through realities, that is a 4-song suite. Yeah, when you get to Volume 2, there is a 5-song suite, which is called The End Complete. Nice. And then you finally end with the whole story.
Yeah. Wow. And one of the songs is an instrumental, and Claudio said, that song is the castle crumbling and the villain losing. There's no lyrics to it. It's an instrumental song.
I think it's technically the word...
country in that regard?
It's like the word no is said 64 times or something, technically. But it's again, where he will have songs that are just instrumental, just to kind of paint a scene for you. And they're not necessarily... you don't have to just sit there and be like, yeah, I'm going to listen to this instrumental if you want. But otherwise, it flows into the greater concept of the album itself.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got my last Coheed question then.
Okay.
Before we have to close this and wrap this all up. But what if I wasn't as willing to listen to metal?
That's cool, because they're not really metal. They got a few songs that are heavier, but they were kind of touted as a pop punk band at first.
Okay.
Until they just started doing their own thing, and it was more prog rock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prog rock meaning progressive rock?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And I think that even the frontman, Claudio, he said that one of the big misunderstood things about the band is that you can't just put them in one category. They will start in one sort of motif, but by the next album, they're somewhere else. And even within these albums, you can find individual songs that fit like your personal style that may not necessarily, you don't need to love every single song.
Yeah.
Cool.
So there's some, like beautiful, just, like simple, like ballads that you can just fall in love with.
Yeah.
There's some great hard songs that, just
one of my
really
favorite songs there is a blues song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I love about Led Zeppelin, is Led Zeppelin has some songs that are super bluesy and other songs that are a little bit more rock.
Super heavy.
And then some songs we're just going to talk about Mordor and Lord of the Rings. As it were.
Because Claudio and the other guitarist, Travis, they said their two bands respectively that they love are Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is pretty much
it's perfect.
This is effectively...
How did I not know this?
This is effectively the space rock opera of those two bands being sort of like funneled into this new version where you're factoring in Star Wars, Dune, some even Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
there's
some fantasy aspects.
Tons of fantasy in there, and you can take as much from it as you like, but it's all there.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, cool.
Or if you're not even liking the music, but you dig the story, you just read the comics.
Yeah.
Read the
I
books.
can say I've never met someone who got into Coheed and Cambria just through the comics and the storyline first. It's pretty much always been people who started with music and then delved there. I mean, it'd be great to meet someone who went the other way too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to start in one way or another. It's just, he's doing a killer job going across, multimedia to really like give everything he's got in his brain to, like anything that you like it, it's there somewhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to you two, because Brian, a week ago when I asked you if you wanted to be on the podcast and you said Coheed and Cambria, Brian was like, "Oh, you can read some of the comics in the meantime." And I looked at them and I went, "No, I'm going to let you guys convince me."
Yeah.
Instead of let's talk about it, I'm just going to let you guys convince me about it, because I've kind of been averse to Coheed and Cambria up until this point, because my only exposure to them is basically whatever Crab decided to play in between their two Weezer songs. So, Crab being, for those of you
K-R-A-B.
Crab is the rock station in Bakersfield, California, where we all grew up.
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos to you, because I'm actually really excited. The next time I take a long drive, I'll probably listen to this instead of Legends of Luke Skywalker. Sorry. I'll get to it eventually. I'm close.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get out of here soon. What are you doing geek-wise? What are you listening to lately? What do you got going on, Eric?
Wow, I mean, not as much as I would like, because, I'm still finishing medical school. I have gotten into the Clone Wars. Yeah, that little thing that I got aside. When I'm not going over the lore and mythos of Coheed and Cambria, they got this, this education thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll pan out.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
I mean, I'm slowly getting through the first season of the Clone Wars and going in the chronological order that Bryce recommended.
Wow.
I follow that suit immediately, and I like it. Even the episodes with Jar Jar Binks, who I must say I actually like.
Have you gotten to the one where Jar Jar Binks kills a guy on accident?
Air quotes? You mean Darth Jar Jar?
Yeah, right, Jar Jar.
No, I think that's probably one of my big nerd things I'm going for right now.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because Clone Wars Chronological starts off with, what is that? Is it Delta? With that particular squadron, with Fives and Heavy and all them.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go, if I was to go through Clone Wars
episode too
for the first time, like the one where with Shaak Ti training them and all that stuff, and the bounty hunters they're having to resort to using, but like all that stuff really just gives you a full like immediate scope of the war that you're going into, which is really cool. Yeah. We can worry about dealing with how much we like or dislike Ahsoka for the first season.
Okay, because technically I did start with the Clone Wars movie with Ahsoka being
which
introduced,
is third
and I texted Bryce saying how much I hated her character. But then he's
I rewatched it a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, oh god, I just need to get through this, and I'll be okay.
She was so annoying, and it took me so long to even like care about her.
Yeah.
But then just going back and starting back in Bryce's chronological order, I was like, you know what? This is actually one of my favorite characters now.
Yeah.
One of the best parts about Ahsoka also, I mean, this is, I don't want to get too far, but you know how I love me some Ahsoka. Is Ahsoka starts off as an annoying child, and she is probably the most truly written child in sci-fi I've ever seen. She's obnoxious, but she doesn't mean to be. She's not played up as obnoxious. She's just, you're just kind of like, kid, you're not clever, please shut up.
Yeah.
Which is exactly how I feel about most children.
Yeah.
So it's
True.
Yeah.
But she's written really, really well, or at least really, really authentically.
Yeah.
Fair
which
enough.
I really appreciate, because when she does grow, you love her so much more.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. You were really lucky to be able
That's
to
my
do
ass
that
having
way.
the Ahsoka figure up there.
Yeah. Have you watched
Next to
Rebels
Revan.
yet?
Rebels, no. I mean,
boy.
I got
Oh,
so
man,
much
boy.
to catch up on, guys.
Don't you worry. Don't you worry. Okay. So musically, are you listening to any new albums or anything, since we are on a kind of half music podcast this time?
You know, I actually, in high school, I liked some Fall of Troy, but I only heard the couple songs like the FCP remix and a couple others.
Classic. One
And
of them
then
was on Guitar Hero.
Yeah, and I did a series of long drives recently, and I was thinking, you know what if I just, go back to some bands that I heard in high school.
Oh, right.
And I thought, you know what, let's just listen to Fall of Troy. And man, that stuff is crushing right now.
Holds
I'm
up.
so into it. Does, man. Oh, man.
I really need to listen to newer stuff.
I listened to that as well, and it's pretty good too.
Nice.
I think like the Manipulator album is like where I'm like, that's my jam.
Classic.
But
yeah.
that's probably one of my new musical interests,
Yeah.
especially because I've slowly branched. Like my original musical interest was more heavy metal and Metallica, and then Coheed was kind of a natural like maturing from there, where there's some screaming to it.
Yeah.
There's some change in like darker themes. So you're kind of growing from there. Then I had more like Killswitch Engage, which is just straight up like
one of my all-time favorites.
hardcore, but they have very positive lyrics, which is
they're
refreshing.
very shoot, they had a name for it. The lead singer kind of came up with.
Which one, Howard or
Jesse?
Jesse?
Shoot, I can't remember it. It's like life positive metal or something like that.
And that's great.
Life metal.
And
That's what it is.
life- yeah.
Life metal. They're
And
very
then-
positive with their
Yeah,
stuff.
and to take it
Except
from the
Howard's emo album, but that's a whole thing.
Oh god, that was hard to listen to, man.
it was.
I had to stop for a while because that was too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there.
But then the next progression from there is, what's kind of there where you have still quality musicianship, but you're taking to the next level of, there's a bit more screaming, but there's still like melodic elements as well, and then it just Fall of Troy kind of fit that next progression for me.
Gotcha.
And that really just is like hitting me right there at this time in my life. I don't know. Wow. I mean, I don't know what that speaks for being a fourth year medical student, but that structured
Who hopes to work with children.
who's working with children, but the structured chaos that like I'm a big fan of. So
Yeah.
And I
totally.
think that's probably what makes Coheed really interesting, because when you hear that sort of instrumentation, you expect low kind of noise, and instead you're met with this kind of higher actually melodic vocals, even if they are
Which made sense because they did a Iron Maiden cover, The Trooper, and it is one of my all-time favorite covers.
Which, by the way, one of the 4 concerts I went to was them opening for Iron Maiden.
Oh, no way.
Which was one of the dopest concert
shit.
experiences of my life. It was
That's
weird because like
cool
I was
lineup.
the kid coming to the concert for the opener, and then it just as like a bonus, I'm now staying for Iron Maiden.
Maiden? That's
And
pretty
talk
cool.
about guitar work. Oh my god.
All 3 of the guitars.
Phenomenal. Oh my. I took so many videos. I was the standard idiot just watching the concert through my phone because I had to record most of it.
Yeah.
But it was so good.
Yeah.
And like talking about like the high pitched operatic vocals that are just taking it to the next level is Bruce Dickinson.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so good. That was top 3 concert going experiences of my life.
Yeah, I still need to see them. So I
guess high pitch is being different isn't really the thing. It's that it's high pitch and it's like also singing at that level.
Yeah.
That's
it's
not
controllable.
Yeah.
A similar analog was a couple years ago when Lady Gaga was performing on the Grammys with Metallica.
Oh, yeah.
And her higher operatic singing voice just works so well.
It really
I gotta watch
did.
that. That sounds
Have you not
awesome.
seen it?
Okay.
So
Well, into Metallica, I was around when they killed Napster, so I have
okay.
like a little
By the
bit
way,
of a beef.
Lars was right.
Yeah.
You were all wrong. Saint Anger still kind of sucks, but I appreciate it on an emotional level.
They played Frantic on the radio yesterday, and I'm like, oh, this is dumb. I'm gonna see how long I can listen to this. And like 30 seconds in, I'm like, I can't stand that snare drum anymore. Nope. And the recording quality was fucking terrible.
Now trained in appreciating mental health and understanding what that took from them, from repressed anger and just total resentment for 20 years, and how it got them to heal and move on. I can appreciate it. I don't
I dug
like
the documentary,
but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But
20 years is a little long.
And
But
speaking of the Grammys, that was a huge problem because James Hetfield, the lead singer's mic cut out live.
Yeah.
So he like flipped out on stage, but Lady Gaga kind of like ran over with her mic and they were dual singing, but they had an audio file of them during the practice.
Rehearsal.
So if you hear rehearsal, it is so on point.
It's crazy good. We'll pull that up too. We got a list of stuff we'll listen to.
Okay, Brian.
So hold on. I've seen Coheed like 4 or 5 times now.
Or this.
Yeah, still important. The
Very
first
important.
time, I think it was with Fall of Troy in Bakersfield, and it was cool because it was a smaller
So
venue.
jealous.
Yeah, and it was right when Burning Star 4 came out. Mm-hmm. So they played Welcome Home, and they finished off with
The Willing Well? Oh, yeah. Final Cut?
Yeah, Final Cut, which they jammed out. Did the drum solo. Not as long one as the DVD, but still great.
Yeah, I mean,
right, because you got
Yeah. Second show I've seen them at was they toured with Avenged Sevenfold, and it was the weirdest lineup. Saw them at Bakersfield, the convention center. They didn't play Rabobank; they played next door at the convention center, and it was weird because you had all these like bro metalhead dudes,
Yeah.
Right.
and then Coheed's fans,
Yeah.
and it was very split. And it was a co-headlining tour, so it was just them two.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah, so like
intermingle.
every other show, they'd switch off playing first or second. So our show, Coheed played first. They put on a great show like always, and then Avenged Sevenfold came on. It was just such a weird vibe. I don't like Avenged anyways, but yeah.
I appreciate him. Sinister Gates is a killer guitarist, and let me just say, like, I think that Avenged Sevenfold really encapsulates that Spinal Tap of D minor is the saddest of all keys, so they play every single song in D minor.
Every solo sounds the same.
Single album.
Yeah.
I'm so
Who
sick
needs a
of
4-chord
D
song when you can just stay in a key?
Yeah.
I mean, they crushed that key.
It was great. Yeah.
It's so good.
The
guitar works
great.
impeccable. The vocals, drums.
I was a fan of their early albums, but when they got poppy. But
Gotcha.
I also saw Coheed open up for Slipknot.
Neat.
Wow.
I
remember when you went to that concert.
It was Coheed and Cambria, Trivium, and But Trivium
I'm getting into Trivium now, too. Now I think about it. They're so good.
Oh, yeah. I've
their
listened to them
cover
since
of Master
04.
of Puppets
It's great.
is one of the best covers I've ever heard.
Yeah, that whole album of...
The Carrick remakes Master Puppets?
Yeah. It's so good. Anyways.
Sorry, we're going off on tangents left and right.
So it was Trivium.
Welcome to Sneaky Geek.
Yeah. It's a pleasure, gents.
So basically, at Trivium, kind of a thrashy metal band, opened first, and then it was Coheed and Cambria. They played most of their heavy stuff, but it still wasn't heavy enough for that crowd. Mm-hmm. And people were throwing all sorts of shitty, just stuff on stage, hitting the band members as they were playing, and they opened up with Welcome Home, which was cool, but then they went to Blood Red Summer.
They should appreciate the fact that they get to calm down after thrash metal.
No, not really.
Once
That's
you're
not how that show
you gotta keep going.
God, no, yeah. So they put on a great show.
My neck will need a break, okay?
No, it won't. You're doing it wrong, man.
I've been in car accidents.
And then Slipknot played. All 3 bands put on a hell of a good show, but it was just such a weird lineup.
Yeah, they're on their own for sure. Coheed and Cambria.
Yeah, and then I ended up seeing Coheed at Warped Tour when they played, which was a cool year because it was the heavier. So it was Killswitch Engage, Coheed, Avenged Sevenfold played, As I Lay Dying, Pennywise was playing that year. It was a solid year. Yeah, and then I think because I was supposed to meet up with you at the last show at the Palladium when they were doing Neverender 4. And then you got the fancy VIP package.
Yes, I didn't get to meet the band, but I got to get in early and get prime seats. Yeah. And, what a great show.
Yeah, it was good. And then they ended up with a little, a best of, 3-song finisher afterwards. They played some of the newer songs. Island, one of my favorite songs off that.
Yes, they did play Island.
Yeah, so good.
Just in terms of concert going experience, what I love about the Coheed audience is that we're there for the music, but we're also kind of tied by this really nerdy concept. Yeah. So in terms of other concert goers, I feel like I had one of the more positive experiences. Yeah. Sometimes, a mosh gets started, but if anyone looks like they're hurt or someone's in danger or falling down, people will jump in and help pick you up.
That's That's
a very positive.
That's pretty common for any metal show.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like I've been to a couple where it was just kill or be killed.
Oh man.
But every time I've gone to Coheed and I was ever involved near a mosh, it was just really cool. Really good.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah. Anyways.
What sort of music are you working on right now? Any new songs come out that you've been super jamming to, or any new albums out?
To? Yeah. Dave Matthews Band's new album is really good.
Is it?
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
I don't know why I'm surprised. The guy can jam. I just have only heard I've heard a lot of Dave Matthews Band, but I've also heard the song Superman 18 different ways.
Superman.
I am no Superman.
Oh,
because there's like 18 different versions of that freaking song. And of course I had like all of his concerts on my iTunes, so like it kept coming up and I was like, I'm so tired of this song. Yeah. Of course it would always be a different version and I'd be like, I thought I blocked it from being played.
Nope, you blocked concert A when this one's concert
Anyway,
17.
Dave Matthews
So
Band.
so Dave Matthews Band a little bit, because I'm a huge fan of the drummer.
Oh yeah?
Carter Beauford. Fantastic. And I just found out he's an occupational therapist.
No way.
Like licensed from like way back in the day. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Had no idea.
Wow.
And then Lamb of God just put out a covers album of a bunch of like
my answer
hardcore
to this is gonna be so wimpy. Carry on.
But they put the album out under their original band name, which is Burn the Priest.
Oh wow.
Yeah. There was some really cool songs on there, cool covers.
There's some there might be some current events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
brewing about.
But yeah, so like I've been listening to those two completely different stuff, but that's how I am with my music. Just like me, super ADD.
Yeah. All right.
I'm sure there's
and
more,
what anything geeky that you've been into lately?
Dude. So there's an X-Men event going on right now called Extermination.
Yeah.
It is freaking solid, and they just killed off a major character, and then there's a bunch of time travel stuff they're trying to fix because it's been kind of wonky lately, very timey-wimey.
All right.
But it's really good.
Okay.
So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right on.
What about you, Bryce? What do you got going on?
Okay, musically, today, it was yesterday, I was at the bank, and my banker, I say my banker, this guy who's been at every branch I've ever, frequented, my buddy Pat, he walked up to see how things were going, and I told him, so he helped me with my little, transaction real quick, and then I was like, you going to any concerts lately? Because this dude's always going to concerts.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, I'm seeing Death Cab up at Berkeley. And
that's another album I've been listening to, the new one.
I just started their album today, and first thing I said to him is I was like, I'm not really a huge Death Cab fan because I'm always disappointed that I'm not listening to New Postal Service because I love the Postal Service.
Oh, you bring it up all the time whenever I play Death Cab in the
and
car.
he was like, this is a little more poppy. I think you'll like it. And so I turned it on the way down here today.
Yeah.
I really like it.
It's good.
It's really good. It's not as electronic as I wish it could be, obviously, because it's not going to be the Postal Service.
No.
But it has that element of his songwriting combined with that kind of, I don't want to say motif, but like that aspect of it that makes it a little less sad. But yeah, Death Cab for Cutie's new album
it's really good.
is really solid.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get through the whole thing.
I need to do some more listens.
Because I realized I probably should listen to some Coheed on the way down here. But yeah, I really dug it. It's so far it's been really good. Other than that, musically, I recently made a feel good playlist, so I've been listening to a lot of like Cat Stevens.
That's weird.
right now.
Dude.
How does that make you feel good?
I like simple folky music.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I've been listening to a lot more like OG Death Cab and Postal Service all over again.
Yeah.
I feel like after Tommy, he posted about the album coming out the other week. I was like,
Tommy's a big fan.
There's some great songs that I haven't thought about in a while, and I went back to some, and like I actually got to see the Postal Service when they reunited years ago.
No way!
Yeah, their second show back was in Davis.
Oh, snap.
And it was
that would be their crowd.
So it was so good. Oh my god.
Bicycle ride
speaking
weirdos.
Hey man, it's a very practical form of transportation. Very green.
Careful, man. It might tell you to kill people. You can't trust those 10 speeds.
No, but oh my god, it was such a great show. And talk about, when I was thinking of earlier, the Amory Wars is over, it's never going to come back. Oh wait, 5 years later, we're going back. Thinking about Postal Service, they were a one and done years ago. Like, they're never coming back, right? No, they can come back. And it was just the greatest. And they were interviewed on Stephen Colbert's show at the time. They're like, so, you guys made this album called Give Up, and you gave up. Any chance you're going to keep going? And then they just kind of looked at each other like, nah. And then they're just back to it again. Yeah. Oh,
that's hilarious.
Cool. So I do have to listen to the new album. I'm so glad you brought it.
It's really good. Yeah.
And then geek-wise, I've been working on Maximum Carnage. I finally found a stride in my reading of it because
it's a long. There's a lot. It's dialogue heavy.
It's dialogue heavy, and a lot happens. But in the rehash of that, I wouldn't say rehash, but when they revisit some of those old bad guys in another Carnage storyline that happened back in 2010, I was like, I'm gonna just read this because I don't know that I can.
It helps
read
give you backstory.
Maximum Carnage. So I get through, and he's like, oh yeah, last time I saw him was the Massacre, and I went, the Massacre? We're calling it the Massacre?
Yeah. Because that's how
I'm going back. So I picked up Maximum Carnage.
There hasn't really been a Marvel comic that bloody and violent since that
even when they brought back Carnage back in 2016-17, They did like a little short run, maybe like 12 issues or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it going, I know that this is Carnage, and I know you're going for violence, but you're still not there.
You're still not there yet.
You're still not really... He's not scaring me, you know? And so, like, reading something referred to as the Massacre, I was like, oh, we're going to go to the 90s with pouches and allowable deaths. I'm excited.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm going back, I'm reading that, and then I started grad school.
So
So I'm reading a lot. So I started grad school, so I am reading a ton of not geeky things and instead reading nerdy things like How to Research and Noam Chomsky and all of these other linguistic things that are kind of occupying all my time.
Yeah.
But when I'm not doing that and playing this game called Gravity Rush on PlayStation 4, and at any point you can float into having no gravity and then decide where gravity is.
Oh,
And
interesting.
It's a total JRPG. Like, some of the tasks you have, you're like, oh my god, this would never happen in an American studio. Like, this is just ridiculous. And it's like, oh, you got a side quest. You have to make some money to help this house you destroyed. Okay, makes sense. Your side quest is to become a maid. Here's your maid outfit. I'm like, this is so Japanese. But it is, like, the gameplay on its own is fantastic, and the storyline is really kind of a slow burner, but I've been really digging it.
Yeah.
So when I'm not sleeping on Brian's floor, going to Cal State Fullerton in the day and crying in the library, those are the two geeky things I've been doing.
Nice. Yeah.
So.
Sounds about right for grad school.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, speaking of upcoming nerdy things, I'm glad you mentioned Venom, and especially, like, Carnage, because those were, like, my two favorite Marvel villains just growing up. Like,
the new Venom book has been
so much.
Amazing.
And now I'm really worried that this movie is going to either ruin Venom and then potentially already ruin Carnage if they bring him in too early.
Yeah.
Right. I could see them hinting at it. If they're smart, they'll only hint at it. But, yeah, I mean, we're all, I think, on the fence, but... That second trailer did look more promising.
Better.
Although, did you see the original designer of Venom's video where he was like, "Here's what we need to fix here"?
God, that guy's a moron. That looked horrible.
You didn't like it?
That looks so terrible.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wasn't impressed at all.
I liked the idea,
and I get it. It's a teaser trailer, and you don't want to show a whole lot. But that was even then. I was like, I don't even know what this is.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about the video where he went in and readjusted Venom's face? Is that what you guys are talking about?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You didn't okay, so there was a video.
I hated that.
I thought we were talking about like the
where
first
the creator of Venom,
teaser trailer,
the guy who created Venom, the concept, the character, went through on his Wacom tablet and like adjusted Venom, made his eyes a little bit closer together, fixed his teeth. I didn't like everything about it, but I did like that he made it. He like brought the teeth a little bit more varied. It wasn't super far out, so that you could see that Venom could close his mouth.
Yeah.
So I felt like it had some benefits to it, but
I need to check that out then. Yeah.
It kind of looked like they made eyebrows using his eye, which looked really odd to me. It just wasn't for me personally. But I love, did you see the other one where they were putting, like, blue eyes onto Venom's face?
I think you and I are talking about a completely different video.
This is another meme.
I've seen a picture
where people are like,
yeah.
Look how scary Venom actually is with real eyes.
And they
put blue eyes over the white, and it's so funny.
It's weird,
It's the greatest thing you'll ever look at.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out how Venom goes, and I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Because what if they do so bad a job, we never even get to see Carnage, like how they screwed up Amazing Spider-Man 2, so we never actually get to see the Sinister Six. So I was waiting so long for that.
Yeah.
And the Sinister Six, though, new Spider-Man game coming out this week.
Yeah, it is.
I played the demo a couple
times. I've heard so many good reviews.
You remember Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 2?
Yeah.
Imagine somebody took that and said, let's just improve everything on this already fantastic game.
Yeah. That's what I like to hear, man.
Yeah. Dude, and like, you know how like in original Spider-Man, you shoot a web up and there's no building, but you can still go.
Yeah.
Not with this one.
In this...
You need it.
It affects it. The physics are incredible. We did a fight against the Shocker, and it's fantastic. That stuff from the raft looks great. Yeah. I saw a clip with Wilson Fisk and a clip with Mr. Negative. We run the gambit. Apparently, it shows the good sides and the hard sides of being a hero. I think it's going to be one of the best Spider-Man storylines we've seen in a non-comic form in a long time. It looks just... I mean, it plays great. It looks great. I loved it, and I cannot wait for that game.
I'm very excited.
It's gonna be great.
This is amazing news.
Yeah.
I don't know when I'm gonna play it. Probably between crying and sitting in the library, but
in between years 1 and 3.
somewhere in there.
Yeah.
You know, but putting a word out for escapism, like you always have to have your side hustle that keeps you going. Like
that's this podcast.
But even for me personally, this podcast, just listening has been incredible, and it's reinvigorated my own sort of nerdy interests.
Cool.
I got to hang out and talk to you guys, and I haven't seen you guys in years. We were just trying to figure out the last time we were in the same room together. It's been so long, so it's amazing. Just these creative endeavors we're doing that bring us back.
That's one of the best parts about this podcast, honestly, is how many people who I have had come out of the woodwork and talk to again. I had no idea that you were this big of a geek. Like, I knew you were pretty geeky, but and it wasn't like I did, but I also hid that at that time. Like, I mean, I wasn't super good at showing it.
Yeah.
And one of the things, this has also reinvigorated a lot of my geekiness here. When I started this podcast with Brian here, we didn't play competitive card games. We talked comics. We went to Star Wars premieres.
I did.
You played competitive card games a little bit. By the end of the 6th month into the podcast, I had a deck of Magic cards, and by Comic-Con this year, Brian and I got into Dragon Ball Super card game.
Yeah, we did.
The last week we were hanging out, we watched 3 Dragon Ball Z movies.
Yeah.
We're in the thick of it, man.
Yeah.
Dude, so good.
I mean, I had geeks. For me, it was video games. I was really, really into video games, but that was about it.
Yeah.
That was the last stronghold of the geek version in my brain. And now, here we are. Thanks to Brian going, we need to record as we were getting started. And now that we have a body of work, now I'm the guy going, Brian, we need to record.
Roles have switched.
Yeah, we love it, and it's great because suddenly you realize oh shoot, there's a ton of us out there still.
Yeah,
and we're all willing to talk,
and we're always clamoring for more content.
Right?
Yeah,
definitely.
No, so I'm glad to be here with you guys, just catching up, and even helping to share some of my knowledge and
you blew me away with your Coheed knowledge today.
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't really consider myself even a super fan. I'm more on the music side. I feel like, B-Rom here, he's actually purchased pretty much all of the
I got
novelization
artwork. We've got a stack all over this table right now.
So I maybe have a third of this. He's beating me on the collector's amount, but in terms of delving into music and the theory and the structure of the storyline, I'm kind of...
Oh, that's all you. Yeah.
We don't really talk about it on the podcast very much, but all three of us have kind of a substantial music training in some regard. Brian, Brian is a phenomenal drummer. He won't say so, but Brian's seriously fantastic drummer.
If anyone has to say I'm a great so and so, it is a jerk, and you can only take so much. I'm the best guitar player you ever heard of. It's okay.
Obviously,
but we're talking about Eric's guitar thing. But Erik, you were in band for years. You were deep into it.
I think we were a band scholarship
jazz
band.
No, I didn't have a scholarship per se. I've been in marching band since 7th grade technically, up until college, and I'm still in the alumni band.
Oh, nice.
I met my fiance in the band in college too.
Oh, cool.
So music's been a big thing. I always play kind of guitar personally. Just for my own thing. Yeah, so music's always been kind of my escape from the hardcore medicine science of it all.
Right.
Yeah, it's always nice to have the balance.
When I was in college, I did not play an instrument. I haven't really focused on playing an instrument since middle school, but I did do. But I was always drawn to choir. And because
I remember that.
I had that instrument background because I had learned to read music through that. But for me, I was in choir for technically 10 years of my life, and it does come up, and so I can be really harsh on voices sometimes in vocal technique and stuff like that.
Yeah,
because I use that vocal training in dialect coaching. I wound up moving that over towards linguistics because suddenly resonance chambers had much more importance to me than they'd ever had before. It's one thing to try to sing pretty to the guy next to you. And granted, in choir, I was always the guy last to memorize music, and I was always singing exactly what the guy next to me was singing because that was the easiest way to do it until they started making me sing my own part. But I don't think it comes up very often, but that's a huge aspect of, I think, our geekiness as well, is we found something that's kind of niche.
Yeah.
And requires a little bit of dedication.
Yeah.
And kind of sets you apart from people who, and not necessarily above, but from people who would, who haven't gone through that, and you got, have a community, and I mean, there's a reason they call them band geeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
So it was really cool when you started bringing up the things that you did bring up, because that's a perspective that we might not necessarily get from people who don't appreciate. But if there's one thing I've learned about metalheads, is metalheads are by and large musicians.
Yeah, because
I don't know a whole lot of metalheads.
They
who
don't
are
just
incredible
appreciate
musicians.
like the face melting, guitar playing and the lyrics. Like they actually understand what's going into that and the amount of
there's a lot
training and
music theory
dedication
that they look into.
My best friend growing up could play flamenco like nobody's business. But
Ooh,
boy,
oh,
could
man.
he shred.
Yeah,
He wanted to
that's
get
the
on
big
his
thing.
warlock, which of course he had a warlock. Then he went to a metal flying V, but either
of
way.
course.
But with but not like a straight V, like the one that was off centered a little bit with the super sharp points.
Yeah.
He saved up for years for
Oh,
that.
it sounds like a Dimebag Daryl status.
I believe so.
Doesn't Claudio have a warlock too?
I think he does.
He better.
He
He
does.
had a warlock.
They are like sponsored by Gibson. I swear.
He had a warlock in a coffin case. Like, this guy was hardcore. But like, again, that was my introduction to metal. Was through my buddy Charles.
Yeah.
So this is a common thing. It was really cool. It was cool having you on, and I mean, we've definitely talked for longer than I anticipated.
And it's a real pleasure.
Gas, that never happened.
But
we
we
did
were way
this
done
all
sooner or earlier than I thought.
If we did this in just 30 minutes, I feel like we would have cheated the band. And there's been, how could we have the dedication to only go to that time frame?
I thought
There's
we
no
were going
way.
to go for 45 minutes, but I didn't realize how deep this was
No,
going to go.
I was
Bryce
thinking,
kept saying, "Oh, we'll just go for 45 minutes," and so I'm like, "There's no way in hell."
I was
I
like,
didn't know anything about, like, we could have done most of these episodes as long as we didn't go into too much detail in that time if we take out some of the tangents.
that takes out a lot of
like,
fun stuff.
But there's so much to this.
this is really like the almost Doctor Who of a band where there's basic level entry, but then there's so much
different
depth that you
levels,
can go like layer by layer to really this. I was like so deeply into like Coheed being my band. It took me years to like get this level of just background knowledge on my own, researching before it was all out there. And just slaving like, what does this lyric even mean? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to Claudio who wrote it? Like is like this extra sort of mind game of like a Rubik's Cube you're trying to solve, like that just added to it, so you can go back to it over and over again and like find new things here and there.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't know super a lot about the story until I got to the comic books.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I read the novel when it first came out, You're a Black Rainbow, before I read any of the comics. So it kind of gave a nice little background, more so.
That's actually the first thing I fully read, because that's when there were no more new albums by the time I was really invested in getting the background stuff. So the first thing I read was actually the Year of the Black Rainbow book, which is the start of the story in a normal sense. So that actually kind of helps a ton.
Yeah, part one of the story,
Yeah. The only other band I can think of that does anything similar is probably Gorillaz, and their storyline is. But the thing with Gorillaz is their storyline is just that they are a band.
Yeah.
But like right now,
Deathclock.
Deathclock. Deathclock's another one. With Gorillaz, like right now, the leader of the band, Murdoch, who is the real ugly one with the bad teeth, who's always like, you can see like his pants are way too low. Yeah. He's in jail. They put him in jail. But get this, they've brought in to be the new frontman, Ace, who is a member of the Powerpuff Girls universe Gangrene Gang.
That's right.
Right? Super weird.
Oh my god.
But like they have like an existing kind of lore-ish, but like it's nothing compared to this. This is a whole universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. Tons of world building. And I gotta say, there's not many other bands who like are concept band, but also unite the concept across albums. You know what? One of the only other groups I know who does something even remotely like this. Mm-hmm. Insane Clown Posse.
Really?
It pains me to say it, but yes, they have a uniting concept behind a lot of their albums.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And it is
I know none of it.
Magnets, right? How do they work? Honestly, my loathing and hatred of Insane Clown Posse is part of the reason why I haven't gotten in. I've never really given Pennywise a shot. Because the idea
of the clown motif?
Because the clown motif.
What? No, they're so different. What are you doing to yourself?
What? Because I'm like, Pennywise, clowns, nope. And then like I just never got into them because I was like, no more clowns. No clowns. Clowns and music are dumb.
You know why I also never listened to Pennywise? Is because the movie It terrified me so much that I couldn't associate a band with Pennywise.
I was just talking to somebody about how like not scary the original movie It actually is. Like,
no, it's still terrifying to me.
Really?
It is so ingrained in I watched it way too young.
Even
for
with that
too much.
bicycle scene at the end?
No, it's terrifying.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, you're
Really?
lucky then.
Scary movies aren't my thing.
Oh, yeah.
Horror movies
All
aren't.
right, we need to go.
All right.
We could talk forever and just keep recording, but
Thank you guys so much for listening to us today. Thank you, Eric.
Yes.
Coming on.
That was awesome.
So glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, super.
We'll do this
super
again
cool. Let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, and the many times that I'm here in the OC when you all are in the OC.
Yeah.
You're in Vegas. We like Vegas.
Vegas is
I'm
fun.
there this weekend.
You definitely come by. I mean, I'm going to be out of town doing my auditions until November, and then I'll be interviewing. But,
schedule's terrible.
February onward, it's going to be a cakewalk, hopefully.
Yeah. We'll just see how your fiance feels about that while you're, planning a wedding.
She's fine.
She's got it planned.
Well, I just have to show up and I'm the hero. I have so little responsibility.
Oh man.
We're leaving that in.
All right.
Please. Or make it an Easter egg. I don't care.
All right.
We'll figure it out.
We'll do it live.
All right.
Yeah. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. See you guys.
Bye, guys.